Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today we need to talk about Prismatic Evolutions, which is also the same set as. It has a different name, Terrestrial Festival. There we go. Terrestrial Festival is the Japanese set, and then Prismatic Evolutions is the full set. These are cards from Prismatic Evolutions. There are some that aren't from Terrestrial Festival, I believe. It's a little complicated. I don't remember all the things. So we're going to be taking a look at what I consider to be the top 10 cards so far. Hopefully I'm not forgetting any, and I'm not including cards that are reprints. So you can look at, there's a Justin Basil website, which is quite useful. You go, what's next? And then I'll look at the visual set list, and I believe there's EV. I mean, I know there's EV in this set. I don't remember what EV it is. There's the EV EX, which evolves into the evolutions. There are a bunch of really cool cards, but the number one card, and I'm not sure, like Sylveon EX isn't new, so that's not going to be on here, though it's not that good. But the card I want to talk about the most is Regigigas. I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about with Regigigas because there haven't been new cards revealed that much recently. There has been Regigigas, and there might have been a few others, but they're pretty small. And hopefully, the info isn't all dropped right after I release this video, as it sometimes happens, or actually right after I record before I release the video. But Magigius is a really good card. For 4 colorless, it has the attack of Jewel Breaker, and that does 100, but if your opponent's active as a Terra, it does 230 more, which is insane. That's 330. If we look at the metagame right now, we see that that's not what I want to do. There we go. If you look at the metagame, you see that you have Serial GX, which is, what's it? It's I guess Terra. You couldn't refer to Seller, but Serial GX are one-shotting that. Lost Zone. This is a little weird. You're like one-shotting Sableye and Comfy, but you're not actually one-shotting Pikachu EX because of the ability. But if you look at Pokemon like Charizard EX and Dragapult EX, they're pretty popular and kind of awkward to deal with for some decks. And Regigigas just one-shots them on a single prize Pokemon. It has 106 HP. It does have 4 retreat, which obviously isn't ideal to be expected with the Regigigas, but this is definitely a Pokemon that can compete with pretty much every Pokemon in the game to some extent if you can get the energies on. It's certainly not going to be super great against just random 2 prizes or single prizers, but against Terras, it's amazing and is a 1-card tech that's going to make certain decks really good, or at least be able to compete with certain decks much better. Lost Zone could power this up. Lugia Archeops, this is a perfect fit for that deck. There was the Gigas from, which is still insane, the one in the Regi's deck, but its attack does, it's kind of similar. It did actually less damage, but it went in for more energies, I think. But it was okay. But this is better. It was a tech card. This one's also a tech card, and it's going to be really good in that deck. Lugia Archeops, as well as Lost Thunderbolt, rotating pretty soon after these cards come out. The set is dropping on. Where's it? It's dropping on January 17th. Then Scarlet and Violet 9 is dropping on March of next year. And so with that new set, the first main set of next year, then the other cards will just rotate. Also keep in mind these cards are regulation mark H versus, let's see, I think we have a few cards that they don't have regulation marks. Well, they'll be next regulation mark. So just keep that in mind. Regulation marks will usually, like, what I consider to be the new year would be after this set, so just keep that in mind. That's a little weird, but yeah, we'll see regulation mark I coming in next year, which is going to be exciting, I suppose. It doesn't matter that much, but there are going to be some trainers Pokemon and stuff. Maybe not Terra Pokemon. That'd be kind of bad for Regigigas if there aren't Terra Pokemon next year, but it definitely is something that I think it's a card that will be pretty good. You can pair it with Baxcalibur. I think that's a pretty solid way to use it. Chien-Pao Baxcalibur is not that good right now, though it's not like no one's playing it. The online minigame's like kind of weird right now. If we look at Stellar Crown, I think that's honestly like Serial GX isn't the best deck in the game right now. It's the most played, but I don't know. It's kind of different than other formats for whatever reason. I feel like the metagame. I made a video talking about how it's kind of wide open and it's kind of weird. But Jim-Pao is probably around like the 20th to 30th best deck in the game right now. But regardless, Regigigas could be put in there. You can't like use it with Electric Generator. I guess you could power it up with Charizard DX, but that's kind of sketchy. It's not slotting into a lot of these decks super easily. Like Jolon EX can't power it up because I believe it's only the metal Pokemon, right? Yeah, to metal Pokemon, so that won't work. But there definitely are ways to power it up. You could use Counter Gain to attack easier. Double Turbo Energy will also be rotating, so keep that in mind. But and all the Regis. I don't think you'd be playing Regigigas with the other Regis. It doesn't have any actual synergy there because it's Regigigas, right? Regigigas is the one that you need the ability, and it doesn't refer to itself, so it doesn't help you there. But Regigigas is a very, very strong attacker, and assuming next year, or the year that these cards are released internationally, there are more Terras, I think this card will be insane, or at least pretty good. Assuming the Terras are like good, I think it'll be quite good. And I imagine there will be ways to power it up that we will see in the future as well. But there are some now as well. And so I'm really excited for this card. It is a really cool card. And the reason I'm making this video, to be honest. Then we have Badoo. The rest of the cards aren't in any particular order, really. Badoo's a really interesting Pokemon here. It's a baby with free retreat. It has 30 HP, which all babies do, free retreat, free attack, and it does 10, and then your opponent can't play any items from their hand next turn. This is, and talking about it the first time, I really didn't know what to say about it. I talked about it when it was like first revealed, and it has really high highs and really low lows. If you look at it as the best version of itself, it's a Pokemon that has free retreat. It's a basic with free retreat, free attack, item lock. That's insane. Item lock right now is one energy on an evolution. Sometimes you see 2 energy on a basic, and that's usually what you're looking at. It's also single prizer. Most of those were 2 prizers, and that's insane, right? Item lock is really, really good. Items are, if you just look at random okay, not Serial Edge. Serial Edge has how many items? It probably has like 20 or something. A little less than the 20, like what, 19 or something. It's got some items. It's not like Mlock's doing nothing to that deck. But then if you look at something, Lost Zone, actually, how many energy does Lost Zone have? A lot of these decks play lots of other weird things, but it's got more. I mean, it's a Pokestop deck, so it's got like 30. So like 20 to 30 items, that's pretty common. Definitely closer to 30, I think, for most cards. And that's insane being able to item lock them. But on the other hand, you look at it as it's a Pokemon that's just attacking. It's just a damaging attacker. And it's not just damage, it's obviously item locking, but it is a damaging attacker. You're probably not setting up, you're probably not like pinging much behind it. So it's a basic attacker. It's an attacker, 30 HP, does 10 damage. That's really rad, right? Like it's doing nothing in the meantime. You need to supplement this with like Frostlass, or I guess you could do Frostlass and Monkey Door. There are things you can do to do extra damage, but they're kind of not super strong. Frostlass can't do everything on its own, especially against certain matchups, so you just lose. So, you can't really rely on something like that. It could be good as like the first attacker with it in an item lock deck. There are some different options for this card. It is a cool card, but I don't know. It's a really weird card, really high highs, really low lows. It can just, your opponent does a Monkey Dory and then all of a sudden you disappear. Or they, Dragon Bolt, and that's really bad, right? Monkey Dory is definitely a card that is seeing play now. It's not seeing like tons of play. It's in Gardevoir and some other things, but Gardevoir's not like super popular. It's, like fringe top 10 right now, which isn't terrible. It's a deck that sees play, but it's not all that, right? I don't know what other decks would be playing Monkey Dory. There are different decks with Darkness Energies. Don't really know if Hydreigon EX would ever be playing it, but it definitely is it's a really interesting card, Badoo here. I don't know if it's interesting. Like you could say item lock's the opposite of interesting, but it's definitely a card in terms of how good it'll be. It's really interesting and it has some serious potential, or it could be completely terrible. It might be both. Then we have Maxrod. Maxrod's really good. This is an ace spec that says choose up to 5 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy from your discard and put it into your hand. Normally, like so this is like super hard kind of, right? But it's not really like super hard. It's more like Night Stretcher. I guess it's really good, right? But normally ace specs are the power level of supporters, and which are around twice the power level of items. If we look at Prime Catcher, right? Prime Catcher is obviously a really good card. Prime Catcher is, you could kind of say it's like twice as good as a Pokemon Catcher, or you could say it's the same value as Guzma. It's about the same value as Boss's Orders, and those are supporters, right? So you can kind of look at something like that. You could say Unfair Stamps, kind of like Iona or Roxanne. And then you could also say Master Ball's like Pokéget. I don't know. I don't know if there's a card like Master Ball in Standard that's a supporter. I don't think so, but I could be forgetting something. Pokéget's not in Standard, right? No, wait. How do I? There we go. No, it's not. Okay. So there are cards like it though. Max Rod is way better, right? Max Rod's admittedly something like, well, I was gonna say that Brilliant, yeah, Brilliant Blender was like way better than their supporter in Professor Burnett, but then there was, of course, why am I blanking on card names? I don't know. I'm like tired, but I should not be blanking on this name. Battle Compressor. There we go. That's the classic. And this isn't actually twice as good as Battle Compressor. There's also stuff with like diminishing value out of board thing, like being able discarding 6 cards from your deck isn't necessarily twice as good as discarding 3 because the first 3 have more value. It doesn't really matter for this discussion, but regardless, getting 5 cards back is really good. You don't necessarily need all 5, but you can get value here. This is really good with TMS Ogre EX, which is not a bad card. It's a pretty good card right now. We see 2 pretty clearly top 10 decks in Richard Draco V-Star and Raging Bull. Ogerpon with Ogerpon EX, TMS Ogerpon EX, and so it's really good. It's not super broken, but it's pretty good, and this allows you to just go ahead and kind of do not necessarily whatever you want, but do a lot, especially if your opponent is oftentimes your opponent will target like Pheasantipty EX or knock out your attacker. It gets back your attacker. It doesn't get all the energy back on the attacker, but it gets the attacker back or get the Pheasantipty EX back. So you will probably have that, and we'll be able to draw cards from that if you have. I'm trying to think of draw Pokemon, but the main one is Pheasantipty EX. I mean, there's like Squawkbilly EX, and that's not doing anything later on. And then there's also Luminion V, but your opponent's probably not just like targeting that for no reason. But you might be able to max rod it back, which would be insane. It's not a card you'll consistently have late game, and you might have to like R-Run for, but it's a really, really good ace spec, I think. I don't know exactly how good it'll be. It's not necessarily good in every deck, but it is a card which can get really, really solid value because of its because of the fact that it just gets you a lot of cards. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and it's versatile. It's not the most versatile card in the game or anything like that, but it is a versatile ace spec, one that I do expect to see play. I don't expect to see play all over the place, but I expect to see a good, some play as an ace spec. I think it's somewhere along the lines of like, fringe top 5 ace spec, which is still pretty solid. It might be better than that as well. I think it's really good in certain decks, and kind of mediocre in others. I was gonna say kind of like Legacy Energy. Legacy Energy I consider to be a very good ace spec, with like different options, but also it's like not. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with ace specs, but Max Rod is a pretty good one. There's another ace spec from this set, I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure it's bad as well, unfortunately. Then we have Amaris here as a supporter card, which says draw 4 cards at the end of your turn. If you have 5 or more cards in your hand, discard your entire hand. Discarding your entire hand is obviously bad. You wouldn't really ever want to do that. There are actually some reasons in which you might want to do that, so there's a few cards. There's Radiant Venusaur, again, we'll be rotating, but Radiant Venusaur is really weird. It's a Radiant that it's kind of strange, but you draw. It's an ability you use after your turn, like after you attack, take your prizes, you draw 3 or 4 cards in hand. But then there's also the Togekiss. Togekiss is a really interesting Pokemon right now with, I guess, 3 good Togekisses. This one's kind of mediocre. It's only heal 90. It's not great, but heal 90 on play, it's something. It could be useful in certain scenarios, but Precious Gift is the one I'm talking about here, where you draw till you have 8 cards in hand after the end of your turn. Okay, I'm actually not sure. Now that I think about it, does Amaris... How would this work? I think you can choose the order. Someone, if you know in the comments, if you're like sure, if you've seen a ruling, tell me how that works. I'm pretty sure you could choose the order between Togekiss and Amaris. For some reason, I assumed you discard first. But obviously you don't want to draw a bunch of cards, then just discard them all, or not draw cards and just discard them all and not be able to draw after. But regardless, that won't come into play too much. That is like an interesting thing. Togekiss, obviously, there's the new Togekiss, which is pretty strong, I think. I don't know. I haven't really played with or against it too much. People are playing, I guess, with Goldengo. I haven't really seen much Goldengo on ladder. I know it is a deck that people are playing right now. Yeah, this is the standard format. It's the 7th most played deck on Coin to Play Limitless, so deck I've seen a few times, but definitely have seen more like Hydreigon EX and Archaladon EX by a good amount. But regardless, Togekiss is kind of good in that, and you could have synergy with Amaris. Amaris is a really interesting supporter, just drawing 4. I think it's probably one of the better draw 4 options we've seen, honestly, ever. I can't think of too many that have been that good. I know there was Coach Trainer, I think was one that saw play, which if you had tag team the active, just draw 4, and you'd obviously play this with a tag team deck. These decks are essentially all, no, these aren't all tag teams. This one's essentially all tag teams, or mostly tag teams, and ultimately it's a pretty consistent draw 4 supporter. But there have also been supporters like Faulkner, which says if you have a stadium and play, draw 4. Admittedly, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, you need to already kind of have been set up, and then you can get the higher value, but you need to play this card to get set up. So it's kind of weird. But ultimately, like, this supporter has not seen any play. No one's talked about this card at all. And just looking at City League deck list, and it's been out for a decent while. It's only been played 4 times. That's really bad. So, and one of the decks is Tinkaton, and Tinkaton's a really weird deck. It plays what? Okay. And then there's Oko Tengo. This I don't know what that is. But yeah, this like weird control deck. But you just like pseudo different things. But regardless, Faulkner is a supporter that I think is like I thought was kind of okay, and ultimately ended up being really like not much of anything. Amaris though I do think is better. Like how often will you have 5 or more cards in hand at the end of your turn? If you have like normally I feel like you sometimes will. It won't happen all the time. It'll happen sometimes, and you probably can pretty easily get below 5. Usually you can play your hand down to like 2 cards, almost always. You don't necessarily want to do that, and you don't have to. You just need to play it down to 4, and you might need to burn an Ultra Ball or a Nest Ball or something like from time to time, and that'll be annoying, but I don't know. Some people think draw 4 would be broken, so if you're one of those people, this card will be broken for you. So I think it's a card that has pretty good upside, pretty minimal downside as well. The downside is not nothing, and if it goes badly, it'll go really badly. Even if you do have like some way to draw out of it, but barrel, UBX, whatever, the types of things. This isn't, you don't really want to do that, and you might be losing valuable resources as well. Those are probably going to be a bunch of supporters, or they're cards you can't play, and usually those cards you can't play are ones you want later. They could just be a bunch of basic Pokemon, and you're like, oh, whatever, I don't need these, I'll just discard them, but it's still not great. And then if you have no cards in your hand, your opponent knows you have no cards in hand, and this will be after you take your prizes. That's a bit awkward now that I think about that. But that's still okay. You're gonna have to play down cards that you don't really want to do. So this is kind of awkward if you're knocking out an EX, but you can probably be okay there. And if you're taking like a bunch of prizes, I mean, if you're taking 5 prizes, you're probably winning, but then you would lose your whole hand. If you're not winning right there, and then if you're taking like 3 prizes, that's pretty reasonable with like Dragapult EX or with like some Dusknoir thing probably. Then this probably isn't what you want to be doing, but stuff like Iono can be really powerful in decks like that. So you're probably playing for Iono. This is ultimately in decks where you might be playing for Iono in whatever deck you're playing this in as well. But I think this supporter is one that has pretty solid value somewhere. Don't know exactly where that is. Obviously, it's not somewhere you want to build a big hand, and supporters like this are kind of trying to build big hands, but it's more so a situation where you need maybe a stage 2, and you don't necessarily want to Arven, or you play a bunch of Arvens, and you want something that'll, you have cards in hand, and you don't want to like lose all your cards in your hand. And so Amaris could be good. I think it is a solid supporter, and one that I haven't heard too much talk about. I haven't heard too much talk about the set in general, to be honest. I've heard some talk about the evolutions and a few other cards, and like the Vegeta. I've talked about that card, but definitely an interesting supporter in my opinion, and one that could be pretty solid. Then we have Jolteon EX. Jolteon EX is, I think, the only evolution we're going to talk about. No, it's not. It's the only evolution EX we'll talk about, and it has Dravolite. I don't know why did they name these? I don't know any of the names of the second attacks on the Stellar Pokemon, but regardless, you have that attack. It's not very good though. You do have Free Retreat, which is pretty good. It's not absolutely insane, but it is nice to have, because why not? You do have 260 HP, which is like kind of low, but it's not that low. Then you have Flashing Spear, which is your attack here. You're really focusing on for Lightning Carlos. You do 60, discard up to 2 basic energy from your bench Pokemon. 90 more for each energy discarded in this way. I think Jolteon EX is by far the best evolution EX. I don't really remember what the other ones do so well. I obviously know Sylveon EX, and then the rest, honestly, most of them are very mediocre. That's mostly what I remember. Mediocre to kind of bad, but this is pretty solid. You're hitting 240 for... It's kind of for 4, that's not great. It's not exactly for 4. I mean, you do need 4 energies in play. Yeah, I guess you could like cheat. You could cheat the attack using Sparkling Crystal, but you need 4, right? So that's kind of awkward, but you could use TMS Ogre upon the X, and you could do something else as well. You could Electric Generator. There are different things you could do, and I think this is a pretty solid attack, and it's not that hard to do. TMS Ogre upon the X has proven itself to be a pretty easy Pokemon to use. You just toss it down, you use your ability, you just kind of do your thing, and you just go. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. I mean, Jolteon EX is a card, and it is different typing. It's not, if this was Leafeon EX, that would be awesome, but still, doing a really, really solid damage here is nice. You would like to see a little more, but it's certainly fine. This will be one shot. I mean, 240 is a pretty good number. You're one-shotting Rageable EX and any basic EX outside of Bloodburst. So Luna EX, so I'm pretty sure. So that's very good, and you don't need to be doing all that damage all the time. You would be doing 150, which should be enough to one-shot Squawkabilly EX with the weakness there. You do need to discard one energy, but I think this card is a pretty solid evolution, just pretty solid overall. It's not like broken. I'd say it's weaker than like Sarilege EX or Caledon EX, Goldengo EX, the best stage 1 EXs in the game right now, which aren't even that good. They're like, okay, a solid, competitively viable decks. Jolteon EX might not necessarily reach that level, but I do think it is solid, and I really had to include an Evolution EX on this list, but it definitely is a solid one. And we have Lilligant. This card is a pretty interesting one with its ability Sunny Day. Your Grass and Fire Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. In the stacks, that's pretty good. I mean, doing extra damage is always good. Ultimately, there was the Rapidash, or there is the Rapidash, which is 30 more if you just could have Fire from hand. It's seen no play as far as I'm aware. It's a pretty interesting. I mean, I've like seen some people talk about it, but it's a card that's kind of interesting. You know, it's really awkward. It's not really awkward, but it's kind of awkward to play. It's a stage 1, and Fire is a type that's mostly basics. Yeah, I can't really think of any particularly good Fire evolutions. There's obviously Charizard EX, but that's not Fire type. And then there's like, I don't know, I thought of like Incineroar EX or something. That's not very good. So, you know, Rapidash isn't necessarily a great partner for things, and that's going to rotate soon, but maybe Fire will be better. It was pretty bad for most of the Sword and Shield era. Definitely one of the weaker types, but Lilligant's pretty nice. And also Grass is like not that good, but I don't know, TMS Ogre upon the X is good. You're not really attacking with that. Ultimately, it doesn't necessarily have an immediate place to slot in, but it is a good card, adding damage, and it's not that hard to set up. With TMS Ogre upon the X, you have the item card Bug Catching set to get all sorts of things, right? You can get your Ogre Pontiacs, the TMS Ogre Pontiacs, the grass energies for the TMS Ogre Pontiacs, or maybe something else. Then you can also grab the Petalils and Lilligant to get those going, so you can just have way more targets, and that card's really strong when you have a lot of targets. That deck doesn't have an attacker, really. TMS Ogre Pontiacs isn't an attacker. When it is played in decks, it's a supporting Pokemon to attackers that aren't grass type, or fire type for that matter. I mean, which Dracovisto uses both of those energy types, but unfortunately that will not check the box here. But Lilligant is definitely a pretty interesting Pokemon with clear high potential that could be really good. Filling your bench is not necessarily an issue. So, I mean, I don't know. It depends. Well, yeah, if you're playing TMS Ogre Pontiacs, it's not really an issue. You could play Arizio or Underdepths, but you don't necessarily want to just fill your bench just because, but there are probably going to be more Pokemon that take advantage of that going into the future as well, because we saw that Stadium printed. But Lilligant is definitely looking like a pretty solid Pokemon, and one that I think people just haven't really been talking about, and it is pretty good. Then we have Blaziken EX. This one I've seen a decent chunk of talk about, not like a ton, but this is from the... I don't know, it's from the generation deck things that are pretty bad, to be honest. I think the Lilligant was also from them. Lilligant might be the best card from it. I don't remember exactly what was in them, but Blaziken EX is okay. I definitely feel like it is worth a mention. Its ability Overflowing Spirit. So once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card from your disco pal to one of your Pokemon. That's solid. It's not amazing. I mean, it's a pretty solid ability, but not on the stage 2. But it is okay. It's kind of like a Quavo, which isn't great. But you do have an attack here, 200 for 2 as well. It can't attack next turn, but this is very easy to pay with your ability. So the attack's solid. It's not, an amazing ability, but there was some potential with this card. Adding on damage, you could use Lilligant. I think Blaziken EX is kind of okay. It's not amazing, but maybe we'll see some other Blaziken that's really good that pairs great with this card. Or, you never know, right? You never know. This is a card with some amount of potential. Nothing amazing, but definitely not terrible. It could stack. You could get some pretty solid stuff out of this. It's not a vulnerable Pokemon on the bench, kind of like what Quavo kind of is. So, it's a solid card. This is definitely this is the weakest card in the list. I'm going to be completely honest. This one's kind of not great, but it is a card that I know some people have talked about, and I did want to include 10 cards, and it's it's okay. Then we have Tapu Coco EX. This one's kind of I don't really know if it's quite good. I don't play a ton of Miraidon, right? This would go in Miraidon. Its attack here is Thunder Connect for Lightning Colorless, 60, 20 more for each of your bench Pokemon. This will be with Raikou V rotating, it will be a pretty solid like kind of replacement for it. Has the same HP. Obviously, it does not work with Force Seal Stone, which is a downside. I mean, Force Seal Stone's leaving, but part of why Raikou V is good is Force Seal Stone. But this is still a solid attack. It's doing less. I mean, it does 40 more, but it's only on your bench Pokemon. Your opponent probably has like 3, so it's not doing like that much less, but it is doing less probably, though it is all in your control. So that's kind of nice, and so you can hit up to 220 damage, which is solid. That's the same amount that Raikou V was hitting before Area Zero Underdepths. That is with Area Zero Underdepths as well. But this is pretty solid. Has Free Retreat, which is like kind of good. It's not amazing. I mean, this would have been really solid before. Now it's not as solid because I mean, Free Retreat's really solid because Latias EX, but Latias EX is kind of replacing it, giving all your Pokemon Free Retreat. But I do think Tapu Coco is a Pokemon with solid potential. It's a Free Retreater, searchable off of Miraidon EX, and is a solid attacker. It's a solid Pokemon. I would not be shocked if this sees play within Miraidon EX. It could even see play somewhere else if some other like new cards come out that help it or something. You never know. It's a card with potential. It's not an amazing card, but it's an okay card. We've seen lots of Tapu Cocos that have been very mediocre see play because of their Free Retreat, good enough attacks. I mean, Flying Flip Tapu Coco was good, but I think it's like I didn't really play that much with it, but I think it's a little over. Like it's considered really, really, really good. And it had Free Retreat, and it had its attack, which is pretty solid. And there were cards that could like make good use of it, and it was not a bad card. But it's just a Tapu Coco that's quite good. We saw the Tapu Coco from Dragons Ablaze, which this one was definitely not that good. Didn't really do much of anything. Its attacks are pretty mediocre to bad, and its HP was mediocre. I guess better than alternatives. It had Free Retreat though, right? So you're looking at Free Retreat. Then we have there's Tapu Coco EX, the other one, which is an okay attacker as well. That might be a better 2 energy attacker, but might not. It does less damage. And then Tapu Coco V. Yeah, that's the one that saw play. This one also saw play. It's, again, a very mediocre attacker. Saw play with the VMAX on, but a pretty mediocre attacker. Had Free Retreat and was lightning. This is a better attacker than Tapu Coco EX, but not that much. This is the 2 energy attack, though, so definitely it's a solid Pokemon to consider. Then we have Sylveon from, I don't know, it's in the set. I don't know where it originated from, but with Safeguard, you know this ability, right? Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. Yep, that is pretty good. And this, wait a second, Mimikyu is a Veasan EX is right. Okay, immediately it will not be good, right? Don't play this right when it drops, but after the V's rotate in like a couple of months, then this will be very solid. I'm pretty sure this ability is right in the translation, so yeah, wait a couple of months, but even at the very beginning, it won't be like completely terrible. It just will be a little worse than Mimikyu, but regardless, this is pretty good. Its attack's a little better than Mimikyu, I guess. It's not that much better, but Mimikyu can get walled off by missed energy, which can be bad. There are just various unfortunate things that can happen to Mimikyu with its lower HP, lower damage, and its attack being an effective attack, which is often viewed as good because that means that you're able to go around walls like Northern EX, I guess, is one. I can't really think of too many. Trapco CX as well. They might play Mist Energy though. I don't really know when Trapco CX is using the second attack, but in like Lost Zone or something. But regardless, Sylveon is something that can get around those. And there's a new EV that came out already. The EV that says you can evolve instantly if it's in the active. So this Pokemon, what I'm in. Oh, I misspelled it. The new EV that just dropped though is pretty good. I think definitely has a lot of potential in my opinion, and what's this? Anyway, it has a lot of potential, and the Sylveon is a solid piece as an evolution. Right now, the evolutions are like pretty terrible. I don't really know what's them do because they're not good. The Sylveon could end. I think it is the best one, like kind of by far. Definitely a card that I think is interesting to consider. Sylveon is definitely a card that I don't know if I necessarily say super excited for, but it is kind of cool and it's a solid very, very solid tech option within the evolution deck. Or evolution based decks, I don't think there's just a singular one. If the evolutions become good, I think Sylveon will be a perfect inclusion within those decks. So definitely a card to keep an eye out for. Then Black Belt's Practice, a supporter, which there are 9 different prints of. There are also 9 different different research, and I think there's 9 different or something else, but there might not be. It doesn't really matter. But Black Belt's Practice says during this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon do 40 more to your opponent's active Pokemon EX before weakness and resistance. We've seen supporters like this. We've seen damage buffs be pretty good, and it's on damage buff. It's going to be pretty good. It's objectively better in terms of damage output than Kieran. Kieran's actually a pretty interesting supporter as, a mediocre supporter, kind of like how I describe with Surging Sparks, Surfer, which I stand by. I think this is still a mediocre supporter. I will probably try it out at some point. Have not played it yet, though. Drayton, which I think is also a mediocre supporter, and again, have not played yet, but I've seen some people play it, and I think it's okay. And Cyrano. Lisa's Appeal is like not really comparable to the other ones. It's very different. But Cyrano is, I think, also like a mediocre supporter. And I think, I think Black Belt's Practice, it's not the same as like a setup supporter, but it is like the other half of it's like Kieran is this card that has some options. Black Belt doesn't really have options, but it's a little bit better. So I think it is a solid card. Oh, Kieran also does more defeats. Black Belt's, it doesn't do more defeats, but whatever. EXs obviously will be the only ones around, maybe. Next year, we will see what happens with the new mechanics of the trainers Pokemon. We might see something else like something like Radiant Pokemon or Prism Stars. Would not be shocked if we see that in the second or third set of the year next year. But Black Belt's Practice seems like a pretty solid supporter. Overall, the set's like it's a mini set. Don't be expecting too much, but there are some solid cards from the set and some that'll be pretty interesting to try out, and a lot of really bad cards that are very boring as well, unfortunately. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.